In February 2017, my brother and I cooked up the most epic coaster road trip that we could imagine. It was a 3.5-week cross-country trip that would hit 30 parks across the US and Canada. The trip would finally happen almost a year and a half later, in July of 2018. The disadvantage of living on the West Coast is that we have to drive through a lot of nothing in order to get to the coaster paradise of the Midwest and the East Coast. But on the way to the Midwest, sitting about 16 hours from my house, there was a park that we decided to make the first one of the trip, the first of 30. This park resides in downtown Denver, Colorado, and is called Elitch Gardens. By the time I left, I knew the trip could only go uphill from there. This is my experience at the worst park I visited on Thursday, July 5th, 2018. My first visit to Elitch Gardens actually came back in 1996 when I was 8 years old. I remember being there, but I don't remember any of the details or the layout of the park, nor do I remember riding any of the coasters back then. This visit came the year after the park was relocated from its original location, and that was just 3 miles away, and it had stood there for over 100 years, from 1890 to 1994. The new location is right downtown, right between the hockey and basketball arena and the NFL stadium. Funny enough, there have been a lot of rumors the last couple years about the park being relocated again. Since I don't remember much from that trip in 1996, this was basically my first real experience at the park. After driving over 1,000 miles the day before, which was the 4th of July, I was super psyched to get the trip really started. We rolled in about a half hour before the park opened, and I was pretty shocked to see that they were charging $20 for parking. This is the kind of price that you could expect from a major chain park. A place like Elitch Gardens didn't seem like a place that should be charging more than $10. Maybe it has something to do with the downtown setting, but that was the first point against this park. We passed by a sign in the front of the park that said only 2 attractions would be closed for the day, and that was the Observation Tower and Splashdown. So even though I would have loved to get pictures from the tower, at least none of the coasters were supposed to be closed. We weren't going to stay here very long. We needed to be at Worlds of Fun the next day, which is about a 10-hour drive, plus we lose an hour going into the central time zone, so the goal was to get the credits and leave. We had tickets for the park, which I got for about $33, which isn't bad for a park this size. The price at the gate is $65, and the online price is $45, so I'd say it's a little overpriced, but it's not ridiculous. It's no American dream, that's for sure. When you walk in, you're immediately in an indoor section where they have a main gift shop and other shops, kind of similar to Silver Dollar City. We left the indoor section, turned left, and walked over to a staging area in front of the Ferris wheel, and waited for the park to open at 10:30. All of the coasters were on that side of the park. If I would have turned right, it would have taken me into the water park. I heard that once the rope drops, everyone makes a mad dash to the Vekoma SLC, Mind Eraser. I was worried that this would be a busy day, being the day after the 4th of July, and there was a pretty decent crowd making a beeline toward Mind Eraser. This, unfortunately, was the first coaster of my trip, and it was one of the worst SLCs I'd ever ridden. It was much shakier than the others. Next, we went over to the half pipe, which was closed, and there was nothing going on in the station. Not a big deal, we had other things to ride. Sidewinder is a unique aero shuttle loop, and it's often considered the best ride in the park. This was also closed. Getting a little frustrated at this point. We went over to their boomerang, which had no weight, and to my surprise, this was one of the better boomerangs that I had ridden. Whatever maintenance they're putting into their boomerang, please also do so with your SLC. Next up was Twister 2, their one and only wooden coaster, and of course, this was also closed. This was my real-time reaction. Okay, so the goal was to get here quickly and to get out. This is a video, by the way. Yes. We've ridden 2 coasters. The rest are either broken or not open yet. But the sign outside said all the coasters would be open. So, I don't think they care that we have a 10-hour drive in front of us, but if they can open up the rides, that would be nice. So we were walking around the park, still needing to get 3 credits, none of which were open, and the clock was ticking on us getting to Kansas City at a decent time. An employee told us that Half Pipe usually opens around 12:30, 2 hours after the park opened, so at least we had an idea of what to expect there. We decided to get a ride on the Ferris wheel, which had a pretty long line, but it was worth it because we had to wait for the coasters to open, and it provided a really nice perch to take video and pictures. After we got off, I was trying to kill more time by getting shots of Mind Eraser. And then we went back over to Twister 2, which was finally open, and it was a station wait. We got 1 ride, and it was pretty smooth, but also pretty boring. It reminded me a lot of Grizzly at California's Great America, a very mild ride with shallow drops. After we got off and I was taking pictures, I captured this video of some serious sway action. I know coasters are supposed to have a little give, but this was pretty striking. By this time, it was well after 12:30, and there was absolutely no action at all at the half pipe. No testing, nobody in the station. I was about to give up on it. We went back over to Sidewinder, and that was still closed. An employee told me that it would not open that day because the park did not have enough staffing. And that's when I went on this rant. Alright, Elitch Gardens. You have now overtaken Six Flags America as the worst park I've ever been to. So they charge you, it's not cheap to get in here, but it's not that expensive. And then they charge you 20 bucks for parking. The sign outside says that all the rides are open except for just, a couple small rides. And then you get here and all the rides, pretty much all the coasters are closed, except for two. The wooden coaster was open, Twister 2, it was open, but it broke down a couple times. We finally got on it. But half pipe, yeah, the employee told me it was going to be open at 12:30, and it didn't. And then he told me that this ride, Sidewinder, which is an Aero shuttle loop, was going to be open, it was not going to be open because of staffing issues. I mean, it is July 5th. Everyone should be out of school. The park is pretty crowded today. And you're talking about staffing issues? So, I don't know. Not impressed with this park. Not a good way to start our trip. But we got plenty of stuff on the way. And hopefully everything will be better from here on. We headed out of the park, hit the souvenir shop, and got out of there around 1:15. Here are some thoughts on the park. The downtown location and the park itself looks really good, but it didn't look like it was run all that well, at least on the day that I was there. Being there the day after the 4th of July, it was actually decently crowded, but the closures were ridiculous. It's clear that they didn't plan on closing Sidewinder and the half pipe, otherwise it would have been on that sign out in the front. This sign is fake news. 2 rides closed? Yeah, try like half of them. So maybe they had a bunch of people calling sick and they just couldn't staff the park properly. It doesn't make any sense for them to be short workers in July when all the schools are out. Those closed coasters look like the best coasters in the park also, so it's a shame that those were the ones that had to be closed. I ended up riding an SLC, a boomerang, and a well below average wooden coaster. 1 ride on each. That was the final ride count. This was a really bad way to start the trip, but at least I knew it would only go uphill from there. The biggest surprise was how much I enjoyed the boomerang. I usually enjoy boomerangs, but this one seemed especially smooth and forceful, and it was easily the best coaster I rode that day. The biggest disappointment was, well, go back and listen to the rest of the video. Pretty much everything else was a disappointment. From the overpriced parking to the worst SLC I've ridden, and by the way, the SLC is one of the worst models of all time, so this really was the worst of the worst. The boring wooden coaster, the unexpected closed rides, the misinformation from employees, there just wasn't much to like. Sidewinder's closure probably hurt the worst because I've been wanting to get on an Aero shuttle loop, but at the time I wasn't too crushed because the end of my trip included Frontier City, who has the other Aero shuttle loop in the US, but when I got there, that was also closed. Halfpipe was also supposed to be my first Intamin halfpipe model, but that model isn't all that unique. But of course, my next shot at riding one was at American Dream, and that wasn't open for me either. This park can use pretty much anything at this point. Their last coaster was Blazin' Buckaroo in 2013, and their last thrill coaster was 16 years ago with Halfpipe in 2004. Since most of their coasters are on the extreme side, I would maybe go for something more family friendly for their next coaster. Something like a spinning coaster or a Vekoma family suspended coaster would fit well here and would help bridge the gap between the kiddie coaster and their more extreme inverting models. If they wanted to go more extreme, a Skyrocket 2 clone would be a really good fit here. They have a launch coaster with Sidewinder, but this would be a more modern take on a launch coaster. There's nothing like it anywhere around the area, and they don't have a lot of space to work with in their downtown setting, so they could plop this pretty much anywhere. That's it for Elitch Gardens. I know a lot of people who have been here tend to agree that this park is pretty bad, but if you've been here a bunch of times, let me know if I came here on a bad day or if this is typical. I don't know when or if I'll ever be back, since I usually don't travel through Denver for any reason, but if I'm back in town, I would love to give it another shot and try to ride the coasters that I missed the first time. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.